Got dreams of being a professional podcaster, but have no idea what you're doing?
This is impossible.
That's about to change.
A new kind of school.
Welcome to the Pod School Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. Today I'm going to be talking about segments. Sometimes when you are new to podcasting, it is easy to think that you just open the microphones, talk until you've run out of stuff to talk about, close them and move on. But segments can be a really great way to keep things moving for your audience, to make things a lot easier from a hosting perspective for you, and to also keep things really interesting. There will be some shows that will obviously lend themselves to just sitting down, yapping into mics, and then turning the mics off at the end. A good example is an interview show. I certainly know on You've Got to Start Somewhere, my show, it would be nuts to stop and start my guest every 5 minutes to move into the next segment. So we just open the mics, I ask them questions for an hour, and then we wrap it up. But sometimes when you are doing a lot of different topics, and they don't need to be markedly different, but just if you are moving from thing to thing, rather than sort of trying to find a natural way to wrap it up and then somehow segue into the next bit, it can be good to just finish your train of thought on one topic, stop, and then start again on the next topic, and just put a little musical sting in between those different pieces of content. This is something I used to do on my old show, Paul and Rach, where Paul and I would run our show basically like a radio show, because we did drive for a radio station in Sydney for a few years, and we were just so used to doing things in 2.5 to 3 minute segments that we just kept that rolling when we did our podcast. And we would talk about such diverse things that, you know, it just didn't make sense to segue from one to the next, because it was really hard to find a reason to go from talking about one thing to talking about another thing. So we would play this piece of audio in between each of our segments.
You're listening to Paul and Rach.
We had a few versions of that sting, so we might use it to tell people what our Twitter handle was, or to point people to our Facebook page. It can be a really nice spot to get some business done without you actually having to say, hey, can you head to our Facebook page? If you just put those little stings in between the content, you can tell people about your Facebook page in about 2.5 seconds, and then you don't have to worry about it in the main content. As a host, this can really take some of the pressure off trying to keep the ship pointed in the right direction. If you are dealing with a lot of different topics and a lot of different content, it can be a really hard, heavy lifting job to make sure that that sort of meanders through in a way that sort of makes sense if you just open up the mics and talk for an hour. So think about segments and whether they might be a really nice way to help you move through your content. A word of warning, however, don't do too many. You don't want to be hearing those sort of stings in your ears every minute or every 2 minutes, and vary up the lengths of your breaks, as we call them, or the bits of content that you do. Sometimes it's really nice, and I've done in the past with Paul, particularly on our show, we would sometimes do, a 3.5 minute break, and then we'd do a break like this one.
Hit the guys up on the Paul and Rach Facebook page.
Can I ask a technical question of you in Paul and Rach's Tech Time?
This is going to be the shortest segment ever if you're asking for my advice, because I'm going to say that the answer is going to be I don't know, but I am willing to give it a crack.
Are you on Snapchat?
No.
All right, so Snapchat is...
A waste of time.
Correct. This has been Paul and Rach's Tech Time.
Want to stay in touch? Head to the website paulandrach.com.au.
Sometimes that's just all there is to say on the matter, and you can just pop a sting in and move right along with your content. It's a really nice thing for your audience to listen to when there's a bit of a difference between each of the bits and pieces that you put in their ears, and they go on a bit of an audio journey and they're a bit surprised by things that are a little shorter. They can really get into some meaty content with you when things are longer. It can be really nice to put your mind to how you can be creative with segments so that your audience is really engaged from start to finish. As I said, sometimes this won't suit your content, but sometimes it will be the absolute best thing for your content. So really sit down, think about what you're planning to do and see if it will work well for you. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, you can head to Pod School Podcast to check out the show notes page for this episode. Grab my tech guide to find out all of the tech and tools you need to set up your own home studio, and join the waitlist for my online podcasting course, Pod School. I really appreciate you tuning in to these episodes every week, and I would love your questions. Just head to the website and hit me up on the contact page. I am always happy to hear from you. Thanks so much for listening. I will see you next week, and until then, happy podcasting.
That's all for today.